and down in Maryland and Washington, D.C., and we'll get people coming all the way across Pennsylvania from Pittsburgh. And all of these cars are going to converge on your little town off to the side of the highway nobody pays attention to. And they're going to have to gas up the family SUV when they get there and buy a meal and stay in a hotel and go shopping. And the fathers, the burghers who ran this little town, they could hear the coins jingling in their pockets. Now, Cabela's wanted to build this store not in the historic downtown of this little town, but across the Susquehanna River and across the freeway, way over here on a piece of bare land, right at a freeway interchange, right in the corner of it. City father said, well, that's okay. I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to get a trolley, and we're going to fix it all up nice. We're giving people free rides, so when they finish at Cabela's, they can come over to our historic downtown and spend money. So Cabela's built the store, and Jim Weekneck went out of business. Even though Jim Weekneck always charged lower prices than Cabela's. In fact, the way he made his living, the reason he prospered, was he kept the Cabela's catalog at the cash register. And when somebody said, I don't know about the price of that hunting bow, or I don't know about the price of that rifle, he would get out the Cabela's catalog and say, well, look, here's the exact same item, and I charge less. I'm charging less money. That's a chair over here.
Thank you.
Somebody's there, I think. No?
No.
Okay, that's right. Okay. He charged less money than Cabela's, but he didn't have their marketing power. He also had real service. He knew what the rules were on the hunting and fishing licenses and where to go. He could tell people, you want to go up this creek, don't go to that pool for the trout, you want to go to this one. People Cabela's hired didn't know that. But still, they ran him out of business. Now, one of the arguments for this is tax increment financing creates jobs. We're going to build this new Walmart, and there'll be 750 people employed at this store. We're going to build this new Target, and it'll employ 400 people. Well, it will employ those people, but you have to offset that against what happens to the jobs of people at Jim Weekneck's store and the others like it. All the subsidy does is concentrate the jobs that were scattered in the community at a single location. Now, people are going to vote whatever way they want to vote Tuesday on the election here in town. I don't care. In fact, if people want to vote to give money to rich people, they have every legal right to do so. But that's what that vote's about. It's what all these issues about sports stadiums are about. And they're very similar to the tax and the financing. So let me tell you about one aspect of this. It's how George Bush made his fortune. I have George Bush's tax returns and his financial disclosure statements, and I've interviewed his tax accountant and his associates and everybody else around him. So the story I'm about to tell you, there's no factual dispute about. The White House agrees with everything I'm about to tell you is correct. Okay? George Bush was an oil and gas tax shelter salesman. That's the business you're in when you're selling people investments in oil and gas. It's a business that requires extreme attention to detail to be successful. And if there's anything we know about George Bush at this point, is that details are not his strong suit. Well, he was a spectacular failure at this. Other people have written books about how unsuccessful he was at this business. Then in 1989, there was a very wealthy Texas oil man named Eddie Childs. Eddie Childs owned the Texas Rangers baseball team. They had a little 10,000-seat stadium in which they could not possibly make money. And Eddie Childs, looking at the calendar, realizes his time is coming to an end, wants to straighten up his affairs, so he says he's going to sell the team. And it's announced that there's some buyers. And all of a sudden, the Texas newspapers and TV are all full of this controversy. We can't have people who aren't from Texas owning the baseball team. We want to have Texans owning this team. And suddenly, out of nowhere, appears a Texan to save everyone named George W. Bush, who goes through his Rolodex, because after all, he's an oil and gas tax shelter salesman, and people who buy those are not poor people, and says, I put together a group of investors to buy the team. And he tells them this is a really sweet deal, because what we're going to do is buy this team next to nothing, $80-some million, and then we're going to get a new stadium. And once we have a new stadium with a lot of seats, people will come, the finances of the team will change, and we'll make a lot of money. Now, who are the investors in this deal? Well, first and foremost, they were from California and New York. Secondly, they were billionaires, or in that general class of people who have more money than they can possibly spend if they tried, unless they're totally degenerate. They were also people whom he knew in other guises. President Bush was an investor in a movie you can go get the DVD of called The Hitcher, starring Rutger Hauer, described by the Los Angeles Times as the most vicious, gratuitously violent movie ever to come out of Hollywood. So he put together this group of investors to buy the team. He got a 2% stake in the team with money he borrowed. And then he was given, as the general partner, a 10% ownership stake. Very common arrangement in the business deal. I have one with my son, an investment we have, where he runs it, so he gets 20% off the top, and we each own half. So things work out, he gets 60% of the profits at the end of the day, and I get 40, but he's doing all the work. President Bush then has this group of investors who could go build a stadium. They have lots of money. These guys are rich. They finance movies. But heck, why go spend your own money when you can get the government to build a stadium for you? So they do that. They get a special election held on an odd date, where we normally, there's a chair over here. They have a special election held on an odd date in January. They hire a Democratic political firm to turn out the vote, and a tiny fraction of the people in Arlington, Texas, turn out the vote, and what do? They vote to raise taxes. The taxes are then used to finance the building of a new stadium. The team rents the stadium on a rent-to-own deal. You know, poor people have rent-to-own for appliances. You see me on TV, they pay exorbitant interest rates for lousy products. This is a gorgeous stadium. This is a beautiful, beautiful stadium. They got a deal at zero interest. In fact, every dollar they spent maintaining the stadium, you know, somebody chipped the paint and they had to go paint it, they got to deduct that off the purchase price. According to the public record, and Ray Hutchison, who is the leading authority on municipal finance in Texas, and was the lawyer for the City of Arlington Sports Authority on the deal, and who is the husband of Senator Cay Hutchison, and who is a personal friend of George Bush. The subsidy was worth $202.5 million. Well, they sold the team after 9 years, and the profit was $164 million. $202 million subsidy, $164 million profit. Every penny of profit came from the taxpayers. How much did President Bush add through his business acumen to the value of the team? Now, there is a counter-argument to this, by the way. And that argument is, so by this argument, they not only didn't add any value, but they wasted $38 million of subsidy. There is a counter-argument that they captured the entire subsidy. And therefore, that means through mismanagement, they lowered the real value of the team by $38.5 million. No matter which way you look at it, President Bush did not add one penny to the value of this team. But, you know, even this wasn't enough. They built the stadium at a really terrific location. Arlington, you know, is basically midway between Dallas and Fort Worth. And they put it near a freeway with easy access because a sports stadium is like a surge tank. You know, when you have nuclear power plants, they have to run to steady state all the time. And you have all this electricity you got to get rid of in the middle of the night when everybody's sleeping and the lights are off. So on the Hudson River in New York, for example, there are these giant pumps. And in the middle of the night, they suck water up into the Hudson River, put it up on the Palisades a couple hundred feet above the river in big, huge tanks. And then late in the afternoon on hot days when everybody flips on the air conditioning, they open up the surge tanks, the water comes running back down to generate more electricity. And the whole area around the bottom of the surge tank